Welcome to episode 103 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the Holy Moley. There's lots of racing edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm here with my co-host, Josh Fine. What's going on, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, Phil. It's been a great week of racing that we've had. We had IndyCar debut this season at St. Petersburg. Scott McLaughlin got his first career win in IndyCar, and he did it in pretty good fashion, having to defeat Alex Palou in the number 10 car. It was a really close finish, a lot of driving, a lot of fuel saving. We'll get into it in a minute. And then, of course, we had NASCAR at Auto Club Speedway, XFinity and Cup Series, both really good races. Next gen car so far looks good racing. Auto Club Speedway, hope they keep it as a super speedway or as a speedway track. And Kyle Larson picking up where he left off from last year, winning a championship, now winning second race of the year in Cup Series.
Yeah, there's plenty to get into in regards to St. Pete, ACS, got Las Vegas coming up this weekend. We're going to recap Formula One testing, thinking about the next test, which will be in Bahrain, as a lead up towards a very busy month of March for Formula One. We're going to have the Roundup cover the MotoGP opener at Qatar, all three series there. V8 Supercars will be at Sydney Motorsports Park to start their season. NHRA was at Phoenix last week, so we'll go and cover that. Anything else that went on last week along with this weekend, or this week, is the NFL Scouting Combine. We're a few days away from the new league year, so there's lots going on, some rumors in regards to where certain players are going to go. We'll go and give our picks for the races at Las Vegas and give our takes on the fact that Miss Hummer will be in the booth for the next 2 weeks. Obviously, we know where that's going to go. Josh will talk about the sim side of things, Open Wheels 500. You said his return, so we can get into that. We can get into anything that you've been doing on there, and then we'll close the deal here. So first things first is the IndyCar opener at St. Petersburg. It was a really good race to start the year. The qualifying was tough when you consider how deep the field is, but Scotty McLaughlin went out there and won his first career IndyCar race from pole. And as Josh said, he had to defeat the defending series champion Alex Palou to do that. It was a strong race. Only two drivers didn't finish the race. My pick for Rookie of the Year, David Malukas, crashed early, and then Dalton Kellett, who had his career best qualifying run, but had gearbox issues. Only one caution flag in the entire race, so that was an 8-lap caution. So it tells you IndyCar and their caution system. Scott McLaughlin won, leading 49 of the race's 100 laps. Alex Palou, Will Power, where it was your podium. Colton Herta finished fourth. Romain Grosjean, in his debut for Andretti Autosport, gives the Andretti team 2 cars in the top 5. Penske had 2 cars in the top 5. Rinus VeeKay, 6th. Graham Rahal, 7th. Scott Dixon, 6-time champion, still has never won at St. Petersburg. Led the second most laps in the race, though, with 26. Finished 8th. Marcus Ericsson in the Husky Chocolate Chip Ganassi car, which makes perfect sense considering Chip Ganassi is Husky and he probably eats a lot of chocolate. And then Takuma Sato in the Coinware 51 car came from 22nd to finish 10th. The top rookie finisher in the race was Christian Lundgaard, and the number 30 for Rahal, Letterman Lanigan. And title contender Pato O'Ward started 16th, only finished 12th. Pagenaud had a good qualifying, made the Fast 6, but didn't have a great run. Newgarden had a rough day. Pit stop strategy went through with 3 stops. Unfortunately, didn't really work out for him. Kyle Kirkwood started 12th. Strategy and stuff didn't really go his way either, but he was much faster than that over the weekend. And that's, you have Alexander Rossi, Connor Daly. Neither of them really had the weekends they wanted there. Jimmy Johnson finished a lap down in 23rd, and Will Power was being whinge power when it came to trying to pass him. So, Josh, I guess the first piece is Scotty McLaughlin going and winning the race. Last few years, the driver that's won the first race of the season has ended up winning the championship. The way that Scotty drove, they made the comparisons, of course, Lee Diffie, longtime announcer on the V8 Supercars in the past, and of course his, Aussie blood or whatever, talking about the 3-time Supercars champion coming from there to go and become an IndyCar driver. In this spot, though, Scotty McLaughlin, first race in his second year, has put everyone on notice with his driving ability, with his talent in both one lap pace and also in race pace to hold off the defending series champion, and hold off all comers in regards to some of these title contenders. What are your thoughts on the race, the Firestone Grand Prix of St. Petersburg this past Sunday, and Scotty McLaughlin's first career victory?
Well, first of all, I feel like with Scotty McLaughlin winning this race, it was pretty shocking. Not that he won, but starting out on pole, I didn't foresee that coming. I thought maybe it would be somebody else on pole. I picked Colton Herta, I think, to win this race, and I thought he would have a little bit more to show than he did. But then Scott McLaughlin immediately won the pole, and then had a good start to the race. A lot of the teams started out on the red tires, on the alternates. Some teams started out on black tires and primary tires, and it was really a race of deferring strategies. And you saw like Scott McLaughlin, Alex Palou, they were on the two-stop strategy, and Will Power also on the two-stop strategy. It was basically battle between that, and then you had three-stop, so like Joseph Newgarden. But of course, Newgarden ended up finishing in 16th, and it was definitely a tough struggle for him. The strategy didn't work out. I think that strategy probably would have worked better if they had had more yellows, and that would have been in their favor. But I think with a race that basically went green the whole way, except for a brief caution period towards the beginning of the race with the 18, David Malukas, I think the two-stop strategy ended up being the way to go. You saw some comers and goers throughout the field throughout this race, especially since teams with the red tires wear out quickly, and then you go back to the black tires after about the 25 lap run to start the race, especially since those wear out pretty quickly. And you saw it with Scott McLaughlin there. He was starting to struggle towards the end of the first stint with his tires on those reds and losing time. Will Power started to catch up to him towards the end of that first pit stop, but then Scott McLaughlin is able to work his way back up to the lead. You saw Jimmy Johnson going almost up to the top 10. I think he had kind of a different strategy. I think he started out on primaries, then he went to reds, and then I think he went back to the black tires for his last stint, and he's almost up in the top 10, and he was holding up pretty well and able to keep his position for a bit. But then once the tires started to go away, it was basically started to drop like a rock, and then ended up eventually falling a lap down to the leaders towards the end of the race, and was able to keep his position and sort of race relatively close to the leaders. And of course, like you mentioned earlier, ended up holding up Will Power and maybe impeding his race there. Kind of the same thing with Tatiana Calderon as well, having the same issue getting in the way of the leaders and contenders and like that. So it was a overall great race, and did like the close finish to end the race. We didn't really have any really good racing between the leaders last year when I attended the race. I actually kind of regret not going to the race this year, but regardless of that fact, seeing a close finish like that, 10 laps to go, both drivers have a lot of time on their push to pass, and both of them had opportunities to use it. You saw Alex Palou use it, especially on the last lap. But then, of course, on McLaughlin's end, maybe fuel strategy had to play in the role of how much he had to use, because I think both of them were very, very close on fuel. And I think maybe, of course, Palou was able to be a little bit more aggressive with push to pass, of course, needing to pass the leader to win the race. And Scott McLaughlin maybe not getting as much good fuel mileage there. And so it was definitely conserving his push to pass there at the end of the race, but still was able to defend his position and ultimately come out as the winner. So overall, a pretty solid debut for the 2022 IndyCar season.
Yeah, and there's plenty to come. There's testing right now, a Texas rookie test. There's other stuff with the IndyCar series, with their next race here in a few weeks' time at Texas Motor Speedway. Unlike most years since, I don't know, the IRL days of 97 and beyond, they'll be running a race early in the year, akin to where I guess NASCAR used to be in the schedule. They've moved their race up to the second race to fill the gap that existed, I think, from St. Pete and Baba and Long Beach and a whole bit. So it gives a little more continuity. The flip side of that is that a lot of the IndyCar drivers that are running sports cars on the side get screwed because they won't be able to run the 12 hours of Sebring because it's the day before. So that will be interesting to see. The fallout's already started in regards to Jimmy Johnson. He won't be running the 12 hours of Sebring. I think Jose Maria Lopez is going to be running in his place. I might be wrong on that, or I might be forgetting who's his replacement, but we'll get into that here in a couple weeks' time during the 12 hours of Sebring preview. But other IndyCar drivers are contracted to run and be third drivers, and they won't be able to, or they'll be running some crazy double duty in that they'll run their stint at the 12 hours of Sebring and then have to go and which actually, no, that's not logistically possible. I don't think, unless qualifying is at later in the day or something. They could probably run early in the day and then fly to Texas and run qualifying, but I don't know. It seems pretty bad that they scheduled it that way, especially when Sebring had already been announced. I think they could have either moved it up a week or moved it back a week and avoided that clash, but we'll see what happens with that in regards to the Indy cars. I mean, I think another piece, Josh, the championship contenders. We spent a lot of time on Palou, Colton Herta, Pato O'Ward because of what they did last year. And we also talked about Dixon and Newgarden. So those are the big five from last year's series. Outside of Palou and Colton Herta, who's always really been good at St. Petersburg, it was a struggle for Newgarden and for O'Ward. O'Ward never really had pace the whole weekend, and the similar problems that they've had over time with his car seem to have reared their ugly head again. Newgarden was more misfortune, pit strategy. Scott Dixon made the most of his strat, ran very long, and made the most of the situation. They didn't have a lot of pace early in the weekend. They came up as the weekend went on. Obviously, based on the final results, getting three of their cars in the top 10. But I guess for that, it's only one race. Willpower wasn't really a factor and generally hasn't been a factor, a championship guy for a few years. It's more about his qualifying prowess. Has always really stood out here in recent years. The winning of willpower has kind of slowed down a bit. So it was a good recovery. The paint scheme at least is different. It's cool. It's two-tone. So that's nice. Grosjean, VK, Graham Rahal, who's, an outside shot if he could actually win a race. Those are guys that haven't, fully been vested in the championship. So takeaways, at least initially, by what you saw from the big teams, some of these drivers, is there any real cause for concern after one race, or do we need to get to the month of May before we really kind of evaluate where things are at? Because at that point they'll have run 4 races, 2 permanent, or 1 on a permanent road course, 2 street course races, and an oval before they get to the month of May and run the Indy road course and the Indianapolis 500.
Well, I think for some of these teams, I think on road courses, it's definitely going to be an interesting tell for this race because we still have some street racing left in the year, but I think for the beginning of the year, I think it may be a little bit of an anomaly, especially for guys like Joseph Newgarden, who just had a bad strategy, didn't have the best luck, but definitely they're in the same house as Scott McLaughlin and even Will Power, who had his strategy kind of play out a little bit better for him. I think definitely it's more of an anomaly, but then I look at teams like Pato O'Ward. definitely we're expecting a lot more from that team this weekend or this past weekend, and I think the lack of pace is concerning for that team. I think James Hinchcliffe noted it on the broadcast during the race. He talked about O'Ward's team and mentioned that McLaren, Arrow McLaren SP, they're still doing a little bit of development and they're still trying to fine tune some of that, and kind of led to the lack of pace on Sunday for that team. So I do think that's concerning, especially after last year they won 2 races, both on road courses, or one on oval and then the other at Detroit. So it is a little bit concerning for a team like that you expect to be kind of a contender right out of the gate, and they didn't really do that. But we'll see how they improve as they go to Texas, and which they won last year, one of the races there last year. And then as we go to Indy Road Course and then the Indy 500, I think probably have a better idea of that team in particular. And then I think Colton Herta didn't really win, or he didn't lead any laps, but finished solidly in 4th. So a good solid start to his campaign for 2022. Of course, being in the news now as probably the front runner for whenever Andretti starts up a Formula One team, and obviously he looks like he's going to be the guy to go over there and do that, likely in 2024. So I think right now, good solid debut to go out and try to win the championship. Didn't start off on a bad note like last year, and now at least has a chance to go into an oval with some momentum and have a chance to be able to get points there as well. So I think for all these, and as Scott Dixon as well, I think he was kind of on that same 3-stop strategy, I think, as some of the contenders in this field, and I think it might have worked for him, again, like if they had a little bit more yellows, but overall led laps in the race, and showed a lot of pace as well. So not really concerned about Ganassi cars as the ones that we expect to contend in the championship, in the Penske cars, but for teams like McLaren, definitely not having the best debut that they could have, definitely very concerning for them as far as the contenders that we expected coming into this season.
I mean, going in, I figured I'd ask. I mean, it's something that people will think about. Or is there cause for concern after one race when you consider the depth of talent in this series and some of the drivers that are struggling? And for, practice, which we're going to get into, we talk about practice, it's a thing that we're going to talk about in regards to the NASCAR situation. I mean, when it comes to how the limited amount, and if you don't get off the truck fast, how much that affects your entire weekend. IndyCar's had that for years. And then qualifying, forget it. Qualifying on road courses, I've said that watching the first round of qualifying and even the Fast 12 is akin to the Formula One. It's not as good, of course, but the drama is there with the qualifying in IndyCar and road courses. It's way more dramatic than a lot of other series. So that's pretty cool. And it's going to be difficult to make the Fast 6 this year on a regular basis. And if you can, more power to you. I think making the Fast 12 is what the goal is. I mean, you hear Kyle Moyer, who's now Scott McLaughlin's, race strategist, they moved a bunch of the pieces from the 22 car, which Pagenaud drove. They moved a bunch of pieces from there. I think they moved some other pieces around amongst all the teams to kind of give McLaughlin the best opportunity. They had to make some changes even at Newgarden's team, and was it Dixon? They said one of his key guys that he's had for many years got moved up in the food chain, and he's now working with Jimmy Johnson, which in theory is probably like a step down, but whatever. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of moving parts with IndyCar, a lot of players that are getting used to new roles. We may not know what the true pecking order is until in the Indianapolis month of May, but you're not trying to give up points early in the season. Alex Palou has got a lot like Scott Dixon. He understands the factor of having to go and earn points. Even if you can't win, getting a top 5 is fine. In IndyCars, the way their point system works, it's like NASCAR was prior to Brian France. You earn top 5s, top 10s, you finish races, you're going to give yourself a chance to win a championship. Yes, you're going to win races, or you would hope to win races. But you need to finish up high. There are bonus points available. You want to kind of get them bonus points too. And Palou, who may have not had the best car at the start of the weekend, by the end of the weekend was up there. And that's the thing. Herta consolidated what probably wasn't a weekend that he was hoping for and got a top 5 finish. That's the kind of maturity he spoke of that he needed. And that's the kind of maturity he's going to have to show as he moves forward in his career and, likely to Formula One, which there are different rumors going on with the whole Andretti effort, what's going on. And there are things that have come out here recently that might change the whole spin the tail a little bit more in regards to Andretti's involvement in Formula One and Colton Herta. But we will get into IndyCars again here in a few weeks' time when they go to Texas, when the one groove shithole that is Texas Motor Speedway, because of all the grip strip residue that's out there.
That's our name there. Thank you, Texas.
That is, but the problem is it's on the worst racetrack ever made. That's the sad thing. And Eddie Gossage has an existence because that track is there. That's the sad part. I mean, now I hope that, because now we're going to get into this, it's a weird transition, but we're getting into a track that is one of the worst racetracks ever made, to a track that many people have said is not a great racetrack and has not provided great racing over the years. Provided great racing this past weekend for the Wise Energy 400 at Auto Club California Speedway, which saw Young Money get his first win of the season, and at a racetrack where he's won at multiple times. So now this would be, I think he had won there at least twice, or at least he'd won Xfinity and a Cup race there. He's won in a Hendrick car, which isn't shocking, but I don't think that was the scenario which we thought was going to happen. It only really came along there in the last segment, really, of the race, the last pit stop. He won the best car in the racetrack, I don't think. You had guys like Tyler Reddick had a car, he had a rocket ship, and he led the most laps, 90 laps, won both stages, but in the end finished a lap down in 24th. I thought he was going to have a chance to win his first career race. I had a feeling about him, and I'm glad I didn't take that feeling and put some money on it. Chase Briscoe started 24th, went to the front, went to the back, went to the front, kind of sounds like his Daytona 500. The same way, he had a chance there, led 20 laps, looked really good, only ends up 16th, finishes the worst of his Stewart-Haas racing drivers, the team, but to be completely honest, he was the best car out of the crew in the end, because, Almirola and Harvick. Almirola had issues in qualifying. Harvick didn't qualify because he wrecked in practice. And I guess we'll start with that. The whole practice situation, they get a 15-minute practice. Harvick goes out on the racetrack and wads the car up. There was other people that had issues and spun out.
Chastain, had a hard
Chastain knocked himself silly. So I guess the new 15-minute practice scenario with these cars might not be the greatest idea, considering the part shortages that they have. Rodney Childers and company had to rebuild their Subway Ford Fusion, or Ford Mustang. Sorry, I was slipping back into like 2012 or whatever, or 2016. But Subway Ford, I guess I went Carl Edwards there, but they had to repair the car because they only have one backup car amongst 4 teams. There are for his team. So that means they might have one backup car for each team or something. I don't know. It made it sound like they only had like one backup car for a 4-car team, which might be entirely possible considering the nonsense that is this next gen car. But when you think about practice and thinking about Kevin Harvick, who's won 50 plus races and literally goes out on the racetrack and wads the car up or gets in a wreck, and then you have Ross Chastain follows him up and one-ups him and destroys his car. And they had to borrow, I think they had to borrow a car or something. Or I might be mixing up stories there, but that I've never thought of practice being as dramatic as the practice was last week at California Speedway, but it definitely was. And then the qualifying session was also entertaining, albeit the whole, I don't know, A session, B session thing. I'm not really sure. I guess I missed the whole explanation on that, or I didn't bother to read it on J-Ski, which is my fault, I guess. But, you know, the whole A-B session of qualifying seemed weird, but okay, here we go. All right, so now I'm looking at it. So, Josh, what were your thoughts on the practice and qualifying before we get into the race in more detail and Larson getting yet another win, which he doesn't need?
Yeah, of course. I mean, with practice and qualifying, I mean, I think the biggest thing, was just the instability, I guess, of the cars that you saw in practice. You saw Bubba Wallace get into the wall, of course. You saw Kevin Harvick in his crash, Ross Chastain getting into the wall, basically crashing like Dale Jr. did all the way back in 2002, and him and Harvick got into it, and then he had that concussion for many months. But then you saw, I can't remember if there was another team that wrecked in practice, but then in qualifying, in the last session of qualifying for the pole, you saw some of the contenders, specifically the Hendrick cars. You saw William Byron spin out. I think he hit the wall, and then Chase Elliott, last car out there to win the pole from Cindric, was looking on track to get the pole, and then spun out in the middle of turn 3 and 4, lost the car there. So it was definitely a challenge. And one of the questions that I had going into this race is like, is this car difficult to drive because of the fact that it's unstable, or is it just challenging to drive? I mean, I look at the 1987 cars on iRacing that are definitely a challenge and definitely hard to drive, and it takes a lot of skill to be able to drive those cars because you're on the edge and you have to be able to nail the corners right to be able to get a good lap time. But then this car, I thought maybe it's a little too unstable just because of the fact that we hadn't seen this many incidents before in qualifying and practice. But then I think the race changed my opinion of that a little bit. I mean, there's still incidents, people spinning out, but I think is just more of teams really pushing it in qualifying. I think in particular, trying to get the pole and start out front and have good track position rather than just instability in these cars. But I mean, I think there's a little bit to do with the instability, especially getting used to the tire of the car, since they changed the wheelbase, or not the wheelbase, but the wheel size going from 15 to 18 inches. Takes a lot of flex from the tire, and how it interacts with the ground, and how much grip you're able to have, how much you're able to slide the car in the corners. So there's definitely issues with the qualifying, or with the car in that scenario. But then once they had the race situation, it was fine, and you're able to see cars use the top, be able to pass, use the bottom, and try to get position on the bottom. And it was back to classic Fontana racing that we've seen in the past since 2009, 2010, when the pavement really started to kind of age in and tire wear really became a factor at this racetrack. You saw teams use the high line. You saw Tyler Reddick really use the high line, and he had the best car there in that race and just had a flat tire, spun out and collected William Byron, who also had a good car. Eric Jones, surprisingly, up front in a Richard Petty car. Normally this car is like a top 25 car, not really competitive at all. Now in the top 5, and in fact led a lot of laps in this race. So pretty competitive outing for the first time in a long time for the 43 car, and probably its best years since probably Eric Almirola. I mean, I know Bubba was in that car for the last couple of years, but mean, there aren't many races where he was consistently in the top 5 or top 10 in that car. But now Eric Jones is able to basically be in the top 10 lead laps the whole time in the 43 car. It's a really good result for him. And then you had Kyle Larson, of course. He ended up winning the race and used the high line to his advantage a lot during his run to the front. And you talk about the incident that they had with Chase Elliott. I mean, it's basically Kyle Larson, his classic side drafting move. If you notice how he races, he's one of the few drivers really to take advantage of this and do it well. It's part of his game that I really admire. I guess how he drives, he's able to get to the right rear quarter panel of car and then just use a side draft and then get alongside and pass and take the lead. And it's very similar to how he got his first win in NASCAR in Xfinity back in 2014. How he was able to do that and then went up to the top, and I guess Spotter didn't clear him, didn't see him, was focused on the battle with Logano, and then got into it with Chase Elliott and put Chase Elliott back into the wall, and had used a couple of lucky dogs to get back to the lead lap, and then suddenly found himself in third place, possibly a chance to take the lead, got into the wall, ended his race, and then basically acted all petty about it like he did at Bristol last year with Kevin Harvick in that one. So it was a lot of drama in this race. A lot of exciting racing, and I hope that they don't repave or reconfigure this racetrack. I mean, Dale Jr. brings to the point about repaving the backstretch just to make it less bumpy, and I can agree with that and everything. But I think repaving it entirely, or changing it to a short track like they had initially planned back in 2020, I think that'd be a huge mistake and a huge loss for the series as far as quality of racing and racetrack. Of course, the land is very valuable, so if attendance doesn't improve in a few years to offset revenues and everything and operating income, then maybe this racetrack ends up going away, and they end up selling to land developers, and it ends up having the same fate that Ontario did back in the 70s, and later on with Riverside Raceway in the 1980s. So we'll have to see what the future holds for California Speedway, for Auto Club Speedway. So hopefully it stays on the schedule and we're able to still have great racing there at this racetrack.
Yeah, considering we're talking of, there's rumors of Chicago having a street race for the Cup Series, which would be disconcerting. But when you consider Trans Am existed for many years and ran a lot of street course races, I guess that's what these cars are in a sense. They're like GT3 cars in certain ways. So why don't they go and run a street course? There are going to be places that are going to lose dates. I mean, Dover's dead on arrival. Everybody and their mother knows it. Richmond has gotten a bad rap in recent years, and they're losing a lot of races up in the Northeast. Basically, anywhere I've went to a race, they're trying to take away races, so it pisses me off. Outside of Bristol, so now Bristol, they put a dirt on for the one race to go and make up for the fact that they ruined Bristol. So with ACS, I mean, yeah, pave the back straightaway. I would definitely, nothing's going to be affected by paving the back straightaway. Ride heights and all, okay, but your ride heights are going to have to be based on the corners and the front straightaway. I mean, I would be like doing what I can to leave the corners the way they are, and I would pave the straightaways, which they could have done in the last 2 years. And they didn't bother to. When nobody's at the damn racetrack, you could have repaved the whole back straightaway. It would have cured it. Had 2 years of weathering on the front and back straightaway. They could have redid the pit road, which would have also made it, palatable for an IndyCar series finale per se, instead of, all the crap that they've done and making them run in June. They could have had that. But of course, ISC tracks, they're not really trying to work with IndyCar in general. So that's probably part and parcel for why that happened. The race itself, I mean, for me as a fan, I enjoyed it. I thought Daniel Suarez was going to go out there and win. I was happy for Eric Jones going and getting out there and running up front again. And then also taking the Petty GMS 43 and running up front. That was good to see. It may go away as the season goes along, but right now with how things are, some of these teams that are smaller, some of these teams that haven't been up there, getting back up there, due in part, I mean, and Eric Jones has the talent. People aren't going to question his talent. So him and Dave Ellens are a good combination. They're sneaky. They could, if they can get one win, that's all it takes. If they can get a win, they could be a problem, once they're given free reign to kind of R&D, test, relax. That's the thing. Larson winning this race is not shocking. It's before he became this whatever guy, hard R guy, he'd win at these tracks. He won at Michigan, he won at California. And when he was driving for Ganassi, these are tracks that suit his style. So in the sense that he won this race, did I think he was going to win this race? I didn't think most of the weekend that he was one of the favorites per se, other than the fact that he is the defending series champion. He's won there before. Okay, fine. But there were better cars than him. Reddick was a better car than him. But then, shit happened. And that's part of the problem, since he's come to Cup. The closing aspect has been an issue for Tyler Reddick compared to his days in the XFinity series. Mainly, especially his 1 year he drove for RCR in the XFinity series. Not as much even in the JRM car, even though he got the title there. So we'll see what happens with that. I mean, I think there's some positive signs for some of these teams, like Chase Briscoe, who after struggling most of last year, got a 20th or whatever the hell, 16th, whatever, but he was better than that most of the day, or a good part of the day. And, the Stewart-Haas team is starting to come back. Penske cars are in play. So Ford, as we talked about the week before with the Daytona 500, is back and are way more competitive than they were. I mean, got to give credit to Daniel Hemrick, started 5th and finished 9th in the Kaulig 16, finished 10th for my boy Adam, who was at the race itself. So, Richard actually finished 10th in the race. So that tells you where some of the things are changing. Cindric won his first career pole, finished 12th. Yeah, Busch and Hamlin, Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, 14th and 15th.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's things that, and there was, you had 23 cars on the lead lap, which, and so that it was somewhat of a competitive race. They had a bunch of cautions. So,
yeah,
that played a role.
It was a lot. And
yeah,
that played a role, especially with Hemrick. He was at 6 laps down at one point and then managed to use those lucky dogs and get back onto the lead lap. Kyle Busch fell back multiple laps after spinning out in the middle of the race and didn't have a good handling car throughout the entire race, but still managed to salvage a 15th place.
Bowman, the last winner at California, was a non-factor. The Hendrick cars didn't have a great day outside of the winner, but it is what it is with that. I think we'll see. It's going to be a while before we kind of can assess because these cars are brand new, going to all these racetracks. It might be the summer before we really kind of get a read on this one too, but it's always good to kind of get into the stuff that's going on there. The point standings right now, Cindric and Larson, of course, are locked in to the playoff. From there, Logano, Truex, Blaney are the top 5. Then you have Briscoe, Eric Jones, Eric Almirola, Bubba Wallace, and Brad Keselowski rounding out the top 10. Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, Richard, Austin Dillon, Daniel Suarez, and Cole Custer, the 16. Talking about, when it comes to expanded baseball playoffs, 16 of the drivers that start every race will be in the playoffs in the Cup Series, which probably is excessive, but that's the discussion for another week, probably during an off week, which they don't have many.
It is over half the eligible field in the standings, the top 30 drivers.
Yeah, which is really ridiculous. But that's the way that NASCAR does things, and they think that it makes sense. But playoffs means you should limit a field, even though in this case with NASCAR calling it playoffs when everybody's on the field at the same time, it's not the same as any sport. But it's NASCAR for you. It's SOD and Phelps and all them other geniuses, pencil paper pushers and butt lickers going and affecting the sport. It's kind of like WWE. So it is what it is when it comes to that. Let's go into the Xfinity Series race at California, which saw, let's go back there, the Production Alliance Group 300, which saw Cole Custer win for SS Greenlight Racing, 10th victory of his career, second victory at California. So that's a big deal, of course, for Bobby Dotter's team to go and get a victory in regards to the Owners' Points Championship. They'll have a chance to at least compete for that, depending on who drives that car. Joe, it's the irony in that is that Cole Custer won the race and was dominant and qualified up front, and Joe Graf Jr., who's a teammate car, failed to qualify for the race. And he had to take Timmy Hill's ride to make the show because Joe Graf Jr. sucks. Eat, sleep, race, it seems like he sleeps behind the wheel, and he ain't much of a racer. And based on what he looks like, he probably could gain a couple pounds and learn to gain a clue because he really sucks. So, I mean, when it comes to Cole Custer going and winning that race, really wasn't that dramatic, to be fair. At the end, him and Gagson running up front, but Custer was one of the dominant figures. It was him, the way it lays out, it was him, the 9, and Trevor Bayne in the 18 car making a return in the series. Has 7 races, trying to prove himself once again. The 2011 Daytona 500 winner, trying to go and come back and be relevant again in the 18 car. Of course, Kyle Busch won't be driving this year. Whatever car would have been the 1854. So they have openings. Ryan Truex will be running some races in that 18 car. Going into the results, Custer, Gregson, Bain, Josh Berry, Anthony Alfredo, who had newer tires, but all the heat cycles and red flags because Buckshot Jones destroyed all the sand barrels spinning off turn 4. Probably cost Alfredo a first Xfinity win and first win for our motorsports. Sam Mayer, AJ Allmendinger, Justin Allgaier, Herbst, Ryan Sieg was your top 10. I mean, it was a 150 lap race. It went 15 laps past its scheduled distance, Josh, but really, to be completely honest, nobody was touching Cole Custer in that particular spot.
Yeah, once Cole Custer got up to the lead, it was basically Cole Custer's race. I mean, there was a couple times where he dropped back due to pit stops and stuff, or other things, other teams trying to take advantage of track position. But for the most part, he was able to, do the same thing on like the other guys in the Cup did on Sunday, being able to use that high line. He was able to use that line and drive up to the lead and pretty much stayed there and ended up winning that race. There was a chance, towards the end with the way tire strategy ended up playing. Anthony Alfredo could have had a chance to win the race, but ultimately ended up kind of getting stuck onto the bottom and really wasn't able to take advantage of his tires on the last restart to be able to get up to the lead. And I mean, he had the best tires at the end based on off of when he pitted, but then just didn't get a good enough launch off of turn 2 on the last restart and kind of fell back and wasn't able to challenge Cole Custer there. But it was a pretty lengthy race, I felt like, especially for Xfinity. I know the Cup race had 12 cautions, but it was over 200 lap race. I mean, still excessive amount in my opinion, but I think this race in particular is only 150 laps, and they had more. So basically, they had more cautions per lap than the Cup Series did, but yeah, I think it does reek a little bit of incompetence, I guess. Especially, you have the stage cautions, which are already there. I mean, they shouldn't even count the stage cautions as an actual caution in the statistics, but I mean, they do. But I mean, that does play a role into it because you bunch the field up and have more restarts and stuff. So it's always a factor in everything. But I think the race itself, I mean, it wasn't as competitive, I think, especially with Cole Custer clearly being dominant. And I mean, it would have been the same if on the Cup race if Tyler Reddick didn't spin out, but that's how it was. But in this race in particular, I mean, it was the 07 for the first time, winning a race, which is, I guess, is good for that team. But obviously they had some help Cup driver in there and probably partnering with Stuart Haas in some way. But you had that.
They are.
Yeah, they are. So, okay. They are. And so you have that. And then the JRM cars did pretty well. I mean, Noah Gragson led laps. I think Josh Berry, and I mean, there was one point when it was JRM had 4 cars in the top 5. You had Gragson up there in the lead. You had Justin Allgaier, I think, in second. And then Josh Berry is in third. And then in 5th place was Sam Mayer. So at one point they were doing pretty well, but ended up not winning the race for any of those cars. But I mean, overall, it was a pretty good. I mean, it was an alright race, but I felt like, especially towards the end, when literally you're about to take the white flag, and then you have Brandon Jones crash into the pit barrier and cause a red flag because all the pit barrier sand, barriers are busted, and you got to clean all that stuff up and everything. And it just shows it goes on when it was like, oh, it should have been over by now, but it wasn't, and definitely was very lengthy. But I mean, overall, Cup driver winning in Xfinity, kind of a throwback, I guess, because now we don't really see that anymore, especially with Kyle Busch no longer being in the series. So we'll see how much of a theme that is this year, especially with the new car.
Yeah, and I mean, for Custer, I'm not sure how many races he's signed up for. I don't think that's his only race. I know Chase Briscoe only has one race, I believe, with the same sponsor that Custer ran and was a sponsor of the Race Production Alliance Group. So we will see what happens with that. The racing in the Xfinity Series, we'll see. I think Las Vegas will be a little bit more of a determining factor on the theme in regards to what you take from early in the season. Who will stand up there and who will do work in that race, and what comes of that race, and how that dictates the season in general. Formula One, they tested, we talked about it briefly, but in the end, the Formula One 2022 season testing underway. They finished their testing on the 25th in Barcelona the Mercedes duo of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finished 1-2. Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen finished 3-4 for Red Bull. Vettel 5th for Aston. The Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz 6th and 7th. The Williams duo of Alex Albon and Nicholas Latifi 8 and 9. Along with the McLarens of Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris in 10th and 11th. The Alphas, the Alfa Romeos and the Putin Haas's struggled, along with Alpine. They had engine difficulties. So might be the pecking order per se. The Alphas, Alfa Romeos and the Haas's will be running in the back. The Alpines will be on the back foot for a bit. There's AlphaTauri is kind of iffy, but what will you say? I mean, it's AlphaTauri is iffy one day, but Pierre Gasly the day before did 147 laps. So, I mean, I guess the question is, Josh, what can we take away? I mean, I think McLaren showed that they might be able to make that next step or get themselves back to where they have been for many years before. I think Ferrari also has a similar story. Mercedes, I think, as the days went on, kept on building up on their deal. And I truly believe that Red Bull's sandbagging before they even get to the first race of the year, because they're not trying to allow any secrets or allow anything for Mercedes to do within their cost cap limitations, which exist now in Formula One. But what are your takeaways, Josh, in regards to Formula One testing at Catalunya before they go to Bahrain this week?
Well, I think for this test, I mean, I think it's pretty clear for some of these teams like McLaren, like Ferrari. I think more for Ferrari than McLaren because I think Ferrari is more consistent. But both of these teams look like they're being closer to being contenders once again in Formula One. I think overall Ferrari they led testing on day 2 of testing, and then they were also for the most part they were fastest until Lando Norris got fastest lap in that first day. So I think they look like they could be contenders, possibly being that third team, kind of picking up where they left off in 2021. They ended up getting third best team over McLaren, but overall they look like they might be able to challenge up against Red Bull and Mercedes, and we'll see how that happens, how that plays out. The first race, of course, at Bahrain in a couple of weeks, so we'll see how it plays out. But I think they might have something. McLaren, I think they're probably right there too, but I feel like it could end up similar to how we felt about the IndyCar effort, like we talked about earlier. They may still have some inconsistencies to work out. I think Lando Norris is going to end up being probably their best driver, and Ricciardo is probably going to have to fight really hard to stay in his seat for next season, because if he doesn't have a good year this year, he's definitely going to be in probably not return to that ride next year. So we'll see what happens there. I think for Mercedes, maybe they're testing kind of aging like a fine wine, I guess. They didn't start out that well, but then by the end they were better, although it wasn't a full session on the last day of testing, of course. So I mean, there could have been more opportunities if they had had a full day of testing, but within that time frame, they improved a lot from where they were before at the start of testing. Of course, Lewis Hamilton trying to saw article on Racer, Lewis Hamilton trying to downplay their pace, of course, and I think teams are just in general trying to experiment right now, trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work, where they can gain the most speed in their cars and everything. So I think we'll probably get a better picture of what testing looks like, who could be the players after the next test session, of course, in a couple of weeks from now. So I think it's going to be interesting, once we get into the season. Is it going to be similar? We talk about NASCAR and the parity of the next gen car. Could we see something similar? Even though there are still, it's not a spec series, but there are cost caps and whatnot. And, dealing with the new formula, do we see some teams finish, that we don't expect them to finish in the points? Do they end up having points finishes, or, teams that we expect to be contenders, do they have a couple of races, especially at the start of the year, where they look really off compared to what they were in previous years?
Yeah, I mean, we have another test coming up here in Bahrain. We'll talk about it more next week on the GSP for episode 104, since I'll be a precursor to the Formula One season opener. So, I mean, I think the balance of power, we know the top two teams are up there. Are the two major factors outside of that, McLaren and Ferrari, going to be able to stand up and compete with those two teams? That's the question. And when it comes to the back end of the grid, I think we know that Putin Haas, even though they can't, in theory, we can't call Putin Haas anymore because there's no Russian flag on it, but Egghead isn't going to be driving because of restrictions in different countries. So he wouldn't even be able, if he was to try to run the season, he wouldn't be able to run the British Grand Prix. So that'll be something to see in regards to the Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine scenario there. And our thoughts go out to those in the Ukraine having to deal with this unnecessary and ridiculous war situation and how bad it's becoming. It's a bad time in certain areas to just be able to live, let alone have a life. So we'll see what happens with Formula One here as we go along. The next piece of business I wanted to get into was the Roundup. Just go over here. The MotoGP series will be running at Qatar this weekend. You have FIA Formula 1, 2, and 3 testing at Bahrain as well. So I bring up stuff here, MotoGP. And then MotoGP, we have you got the driver here. So that's not what I need. All 3 series will be running at Qatar this weekend in their usual season opener, 22 MotoGP season, and they're trying to close all that. The group photo, making a big deal about that. Close that. Main chat, looking at hangers. Yeah, so mentioned better and better. World champion, the 3 from the premier class, Marc Marquez. 9th one, time is an option to Romano. Suzuki or nothing. Well, I go through all that stuff. Years, I'm just trying to get the riders and teams here. That's what I wanted. So, trying to bring this up. Yeah, so in regards to MotoGP, was it 6 times? So 24 riders. Dovizioso will be on the RNF Yamaha. Johan Zarco for Pramac Ducati. Luca Marini for VR46 Ducati. Maverick Vinales for Aprilia. Fabio Quartararo, the defending world champion, on the Monster Energy Yamaha, and his longtime teammate Franco Morbidelli moving over from the Malaysia team to take over the second seat. Monster Energy Yamaha. Enea Bastianini riding for Gresini Ducati. Raul Fernandez, rookie, riding for Tech 3 KTM. Taka Nakagami for LCR. Brad Binder, winner, multiple winner in the MotoGP, and the Red Bull KTM. Joan Mir, former world champion on the Suzuki. Darren Binder, rookie, in second RNF Yamaha. Ali Espargaro for Aprilia. Alex Rins for Suzuki. Jack Miller for Ducati. Pol Espargaro for Honda. Fabio Di Gianantonio for Gresini Ducati. Pecco Bagnaia, who is a lot of people are picking as a favorite. We'll see what happens with that. Marco Bezzecchi in the second VR46 Ducati. Alex Marquez, LCR Honda. Remy Gardner coming to MotoGP as a second rider for Tech 3 KTM. The son of former world champion Wayne Gardner. So that's pretty cool. Miguel Oliveira in the factory KTM. His teammates with, I'm trying to go and look over here with Brad Binder. Then you have Jorge Martin for Pramac Ducati, and then multiple-time world champion Marc Marquez in the number 93 Repsol Honda. In Moto 2, Sean Dillon Kelly is in Moto 2 now, so part of the American racing team, along with multiple Moto America Superbike champion Cameron Beaubier. So that'll be a cool combination to look at. Jorge Navarro has been in a MotoGP. Looking at Tony Arbolino for that name. Joe Roberts for Italtrans Racing Team. Be running another year in Moto 2. Manuel Gonzalez. Lorenzo Dalla Porta. Sam Lowe's. Marcel Schroeder. Simona Corsi. Augusto Fernandez. Aaron Canet. You got so many people. I'm trying to look through. Anyway, Jake Dixon for GasCast riding there. And there's, VR46 has a bunch of people. Albert Arenas is riding for GasCast. Ayagura riding for Honda Team Asia. Trying to see Pedro Acosta, Red Bull KTM. Trying to figure out who is who. Lucio Fernandez, Red Bull KTM. And then there is that in regards to Moto 3. I'm trying to see if there's any Americans. Oh, there's another Sergio Garcia. That's convenient. Trying to go and look through, doing my fine-tooth. Yeah, so that's Moto 3. We're not really going to talk about. It'll be Moto 2 with the American riders. And then, of course, MotoGP. And see what happens with the race at Qatar this coming weekend for the first race of the season. The V8 Supercars will be running their first race of the season. The Repco Supercars Championship, 25-car grid going into this race, the first of the races there at Sydney Motorsports Park. As I said, there'll be 25 cars. You'll have the Shell, got Nick Percat, the NTI, Walkinshaw, Andretti United number 2, Tim Slayton, Blanchard, Cool Drive, Ford, Jack Smith, and the SGT Logistics Holden number 4 for Brad Jones, James Courtney in the opposite lock, 4-wheel drive and vehicle accessories, Ford number 5 for Tickford, Monster Energy Ford for Cameron Waters, then Andre Heimgardner for Brad Jones Racing, R&J Batteries, Cub Cadet, number 8, Will Brown in the Boost Mobile, Erebus Motorsports, number 9, Lee Holsworth in the number 10, Grove Racing, Penwright, Ford Mustang, Anton DePasquale, number 11, Dick Johnson Racing, Shell V-Power Ford, Bryce Fullwood moves from basically swaps with Nick Percat, from Brad Jones from the Walkinshaw Andretti United team to Brad Jones Racing, with the Middies Electrical number 14, Will Davison's and number 17, Shell V-Power Mustang, Mark Winterbottom and the Irwin Tools Team 18 car. Scott Pye is the second driver for Team 18 in the Seiko Toyota Forklifts number 20, Chris Pitha in the Premier Racing Coca-Cola Holden number 22, Chaz Mostert in the number 25 Optus Mobile One Walkinshaw Andretti United Racing Holden, and David Reynolds is Team Aceless. What's it called? Lee Holsworth at Grove in the number 26 car, number 26 Ford. Then you have Jack LeBrock, Matt Stone Racing Truck Assist number 34, and his teammate Todd Hazelwood in the Truck Assist number 35. Thomas Randall in the Castrol Mustang for Tickford Racing. Jake Kostecki will be running fourth car for Tickford and Trady number 56. Gary Jacobson will be running a Subway Premier number 76. So it will be a teammate to Chris Pitha. Then you'll have Brock Feeney, who's taking over Jamie Wincup's number 88 for Red Bull Ampol Racing. And Macaulay Jones, Automotive Superstar, Tools.com, Brad Jones Racing number 96. Defending series champion Shane Van Gisbergen, Triple Eight Race Engineering number 97, Red Bull Ampol Holden. And then the last one is Brody Kostecki, number 99, Erebus Motorsports Boost Mobile Commodore. So we will see when it comes to the Supercars 25-car grid, how the pecking order looks early in regards to how the season goes. It's a Sydney Super Night in Eastern Creek. They'll have race there. Then they'll wait, 3 weeks to go to Tasmania, Simons Plains for the second race of the year. Then the Australian Grand Prix weekend. And Wanneroo, Winton, Hidden Valley Raceway in Darwin, Roland Darwin Triple Crown in June. So get into all that as the season goes along for the V8 Supercars. NHRA was at Phoenix last week for the second race of the year. The next race will be the Gator Nationals on March 10, 13. But right now, Prozone Kelly Clowns. Okay. Trying to go and find there's results. The Arizona Nationals at Wild Horse Pass Motorsports Park. The Arizona Nationals in Top Fuel was Mike Salinas, Robert Height, and Funny Car gets 2 for 2 to start the year. Aaron Stanfield finishes as the best in Pro Stock, and there's Ryan McClanahan, Super Stock, and some of these guys are sandbaggers. But in regards to Mike Salinas, a great run with Rob Flynn now as his crew chief. coming in. They've run well recently, so they have a chance in the Scrappers top fuel car. Robert Height. Yeah, so Mike Salinas beat Clay Milliken in the final there. Matt Hagan lost to Robert Height. Possible first win for Tony Stewart Racing in only their second start. It's probably only a matter of time. Teammates at Elite Motorsports, Aaron Stanfield won. He didn't get reaction time, and he was slower in 60 feet, but by 330 feet, he started catching him and then went by him for 6:52.6 victory for Aaron Stanfield. And then you have some of these other series before we get to Gainesville, getting the motorcycles, the Pro Stock motorcycles come back out at that point. Trying to go and consolidate. In regards to Rally Sweden, it was Kalle Rovanpera, the winner. Rally Sweden. In regards to WRC, and then trying to get the results. Rally results right there. Got Kalle Rovanpera wins in his Toyota by 22 seconds over Thierry Neuville in a Hyundai, and Eskimo Lappi and Katsuda for Toyota. They're third and fourth. Then you have Gus Greensmith in the Ford going and finishing fifth in the rally. Oliver Solberg finished sixth. Mickelson, and then whatever. In regards to WRC, the in WRC standings, yeah, we're not taking races right then and there. We're not going to go and judge the whole entire season on that. So Rally Sweden, but there's people who had issues wrecking, but they did wreck, but they had enough time to go and fix some of the problems that were existing with the car to make it more competitive there. We'll go to Vegas now for the picks, or just in general discuss the racing. What do we think is going to happen? Josh, I'm going to let you go here and talk about the Cup Series race, the Pennzoil 400. What are your thoughts and what are you thinking in regards to that race before we move forward and make picks for both races?
Yeah, I think this race is going to be an interesting race for the Cup Series, especially the new car being on a 1.5-mile track for the first time. I think Vegas doesn't have quite the tire wear type that Fontana has, but it still has a good amount of wear. The last couple of seasons that we've been at this track, though, the high line hasn't really come into factor. It has been a little bit more pack racing like with this racetrack, but especially with the old package. But now this new package, I think we may see the top kind of come into effect like it did in previous generations or previous formulas of the Gen 6 car. So we'll see how that plays out. I think I expect Kyle Larson to still be up there up front like it was last year. But I think maybe it might play out differently. As I think Hendrick, they did have really good speed on the 1.5-mile tracks, but just didn't come out to the same. I guess this year it may not come down to the same way. But I do look at the Chevys being strong once again overall, just like the last week with RCR Racing, and specifically the number 8 car and Tyler Reddick having another opportunity maybe to win. I think maybe look out for 43 car again to have something, even Team Trackhouse with Daniel Suarez running in the number 99 car. Could expect him to be up front or be in the top 10. Like to see what happens with Toyota, with Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Christopher Bell. They didn't have the greatest weekend back in Fontana, so do they go to Vegas and do they have a better week? And then I think extend that one to Bubba Wallace and Kurt Busch. Both of those cars didn't really perform the greatest at California. Can they recover and finish or at least run better throughout the race. I know Kurt Busch ended up getting a top 10, but I mean, he ran like crap most of the race and then managed to get it up in the top 10. And of course, Bubba this past weekend had a chance to get in the top 10, then got caught up in the crash with Brad Keselowski in the last stage. So can Bubba recover from his incident there and get a better finish on a 1.5 mile track? Looking for a lot of improvement, I guess, in 2311 in general for 1.5 mile races that they weren't the greatest at last year. But I do think we will see a lot of tire wear in general with this car, it seems like. And I think another point of focus is going to be the cautions. When we see a car spin out, are we going to see flat tires again? And then how fast can they get them back to the pits? Will they be able to drive it back to the pits without needing a tow truck? I think there's a lot of things that we have to think about, especially that was kind of the issues with California this past weekend, cars spinning out and being unable to drive it back to the pits. They had to get towed back to the pits and then ended up losing a lot of laps anyways and basically falling out of contention in the race, like Brad Keselowski and other drivers in Fontana. So I think it's going to be a thing to think about and probably a point of focus, something that the series is going to have to fix, I guess, in terms of improving the bugs in this car, the defects, if you want to call it that, or they can have to figure out a different way of getting these cars to recover from a spin without losing a tire. And people are saying, well, just don't spin out or get a flat tire. And I mean, you have to be able to account for that though, because spinning out, I mean, it's going to happen for some cars. It'll happen, but I think it's enough of a event that could happen that you have to be able to be prepared for it. You can't just like say, oh, it's whatever, and then move on. You have to be able to account for things like that are commonalities when it comes to how racing works in general. So we'll see how that goes if they're able to improve the recoveries from spins and whatnot. I mean, I didn't talk about the Fords, but I do think Penske, I think they're going to be up front again. Penske is always up front at Las Vegas, and I wouldn't expect anything different from that. We'll see if they're able to go out and do that in this race, but I do think in general Ford still looked strong overall, and even though they they didn't finish, some of their teams didn't finish as well this week as they did in Daytona. So definitely think maybe the Fords bounce back a little bit better from California going into this weekend. But general, I think it's probably going to be a mix of the Chevys and the Fords mostly up front.
Yeah, we have, I mean, there's still a lot to look at. I mean, the winds are going to be an issue at Vegas. They're close to the Nellis Air Force Base there or whatever. So the winds do play a role, and that was with previous cars as well. But now I think any type of weather condition, you have to really think about what kind of weather conditions are out there, how that'll affect the car, and winds when you don't have that big sail on the left rear corner of the car now, and the deck lid and all that, how much that affects the drivability and also being able to drive in and off of the corners. The Fords, they have a lot of strong cars so far to start the year. Think, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, two guys and Kurt Busch, of course, wants to win at Las Vegas. He did a few years ago, and one car finally. Of course, Kyle's won there too, but you look at Toyota, they want to win a race here. It might be an opportunity for them amongst their crew to go and get a W there at Las Vegas. In regards to the Chevys, there are some Chevys, like the big names, of course, is the Hendrick, but, RCR is up there. That track has a little bit of seasoning, so running that high line, Reddick could be up there again. You have the other drivers. There's the majority of them are Chevy drivers, so there is that. The Petty GMS team with Eric Jones. What can they do as an encore? But the RCR affiliated team seem to be doing all right here in this spot. So that's something we'll see if that trend continues. with this car, with the fours. I mean, Stewart, Austin, Penske have been doing good work so far this year, but can they close? Penske, of course, did with Cindric at Daytona, but you want to see them close on a regular track, a track that they're going to be running at a lot. That and the road courses are what they're going to be running at a lot this year, or in key spots in general. Who do you look at for the Cup Series race in terms of, I guess, for not just the winner there, Josh, but a dark horse pick? And I don't know if you're going algorithm, but if you're doing algorithm, then we can do that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Chevys, like I said earlier, I think they're going to be pretty fast this weekend. I mean, I look at Hendrick kind of to continue their success from 1.5 tracks last year. I look at, again, I'm going to go, with Young Money again. I mean, last week I picked Young Money and I was on the money, so I'm going to pick Kyle Larson again to go 2 in a row to start the year. 2 out of 3 ain't bad for the first 3 races, so go with him. I think dark horse. I mean, it's tough to say, but I'm going to go with the 47, Ricky Stenhouse. I thought that last weekend he looked like he could be a guy that could contend in the race. He was in the top 10 a few times during the Auto Club or the Wise Power 400. So look for that team to possibly be another contender once again in the top 10. And then they did end up finishing in the top 10 at Fontana. So look for them to try to at least have their name up there on the leaderboard as we go throughout that race and as things come to fruition. And then I did go algorithm. I did make that pick or set that up while you were saying your part there, and it picks Denny Hamlin to win the Las Vegas Pennzoil 400. So the algorithms, at the first it was picking random picks, but now it seems as we've seasoned it a little bit, starting to learn what things are, who's the contenders and stuff. So now it picked Denny Hamlin, which is pretty legitimate, I think, as far as the algorithm pick goes in the Cup Series.
So Kyle Larson, you have O. Richard, which would theoretically be the wild card, and then the algorithm goes Denny Hamlinberger, car owner / driver / outspoken whatever here to go and get a win at Las Vegas. I'm trying to remember off the top. I think he has one win there. Denny Hamlin at Las Vegas, so wouldn't be out of the realm. It goes and fits my narrative in regards to the Toyotas. I think that Martin Truex is going to go out and get his first win of the year. He won both stages in the 500, but then kind of fell back. Last week wasn't as much of a factor. Vegas is one of his better racetracks. It's a spot for Toyota wanting to go and win. If it wasn't going to be him, I figure it would be Kyle Busch. So I'm picking Martin Truex. In regards to a wild card pick, somebody that might be a little bit off the grid that might go and theoretically go and win this race, I'm going to get really crazy with it, actually. I'm going to go Eric Almirola. I mean, it's his final year. He's had good runs at these 1.5 mile racetracks in recent past. The way that him and Drew Blickensderfer are working together seems to be proving to be very fruitful. And it would be an upset if he went out there and won the race at Las Vegas. So I'll pick Eric Almirola as my wild card pick. As a third pick, just as somebody to look at, I guess. And in my case, will be somebody to look for when it comes to this race. I would go and say, because I already have Truex, and then spoke about that right there. I'm going to go through this field, and Eric Almirola. So I have to pick a Chevy. So the third person look at, I'm looking at a Chevy driver, and I'm going to go with 48 car. I'm going to go with Alex Bowman, Ally Chevrolet. He's good on certain types of racetracks. The older surfaces seem to suit him better, rougher surfaces. Vegas is starting to get some seasoning in it. Ives is on and off when it comes to setups, and they're relatively inconsistent, but when they do hit, they're able to hit hard and win. So I chose the 19. I looked at Eric Almirola as a wild card, and then as a third driver to watch is Alex Bowman in the 48 car for this weekend. We'll see what happens in regards to all that. The Xfinity Series race this coming weekend is the Alsco Uniforms 300, 42 drivers for 38 spots, so 4 cars will go home. You have certain people there that aren't worth a whole hell of a lot, and you have Kaz Gralla running the 45 Alpha Prime Chevy. Ryan Ellis will be in the 44 Alpha Prime Chevy. The Sieg brothers there, and CJ McLaughlin, who's a caution waiting to happen. So that's virtually a guarantee, and he sucks. Jesse Iwuji is going to be dead last because that's Jesse Iwuji. Trying to go through some of these other people. The MBM 13 doesn't have a driver. As of this announcement, Joe Graff Jr., of course, failed to qualify last week. So we'll see what he does this week. Sheldon Creed's had a tough start to the year, but I figure that'll turn around eventually. And Gagson's from around there, so he's going to want to win. There's stories, out about Landon Castle and his opportunity finally being top flight equipment after many years of being in underfunded equipment. Ryan Truex will be making his return to Joe Gibbs Racing this weekend in the 18 car. Those are some of the people that kind of theoretically stand out in this crowd. I'll go and make my picks. I'm going to pick Josh Berry. He's had a rough start to the season, but I feel like he's got a new crew chief, so they made that change. He had a couple of races. You're able to make adjustments, especially at California. And hopefully with the limited practice they have, they're able to hit on it and be in a position to qualify well. And if that happens, then they have a good chance of competing and winning another race. Of course, he won in the 1 car last fall. I think Josh Berry would be somebody as a good choice for the victory. The wild card, I guess in theory it's a stretch calling it a wild card, but I'll say Ryan Truex. He's been close before in the Xfinity Series at Joe Gibbs Racing. He's been close when he was at Colleague. At some point, he has to get over that and get that victory. So for me, it's it will be the 18 as I picked for the wild card. And 8. So 8 and 18 were my picks. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think for me in this race, you have a lot of fast cars from the top teams like Colleague, JR Motorsports, Gibbs. They've been up there as well with their star car, the 18 car, and 54. And I think for me, I'm going to go with Ty Gibbs in the 54. He's had some good success on mile and a half tracks in the last year. Won at Charlotte last year, won at Kansas, both mile and a half tracks. And when Gibbs cars are out front, they tend to win. So I expect the 54 car to be able to go out and win this race. I think for me, maybe someone to watch. I maybe look at the 1 car, Sam Mayer, just someone who could be up there like in the top 10, top 15-ish there. I think a total wild card, I think, would be the 23. And Anthony Alfredo was really impressive last weekend at Fontana. If things kind of play out the same way, he's able to get tires at the end, may be able to see him up front or close to up front at the end if pit stops go his way, pit strategy goes his way. So that's what I'm thinking, I guess, on the Xfinity side. And then, of course, the algorithm will run that for the Xfinity Series as well, and it picks Justin Allgaier to win this race. So a lot of good numbers we're throwing out here right now in the GSP.
Yeah, you're hedging. Denny Hamlin and Justin Allgaier on the algorithm at a cookie cutter are solid picks for sure. And then you talk about Sam Mayer and Ty Gibbs. Those are three very solid picks. One, I figure since we're doing three, one other person that I would say to look at in general, and for this race, there's 4, 5, 6, 4 there. Somebody I would say to look at as a wild card is Sheldon Creed. It's kind of unfair to say he's a wild card, but he is inexperienced in XFinity equipment, but he has a fast race car. His teammate won the week before at Daytona, or a couple weeks ago now at Daytona. So that Sheldon Creed is going to want to show out and put himself in a position to make the playoffs without having to go through serious effort later in the year. The Truck Series will run on Friday night for the Victoria's Voice 2 Foundation 200. There's 37 for 36, 37 trucks for 36 spots. Todd Bodine's running a second Halmar Friesen Toyota with Camping World on it. He's going to run enough to get to 7 races to get to 500 starts, I believe is what it is, or something like that. Certain Kyle Busch will be in this field, so that basically says something. Priest will be in the DGR Ford with United Rentals. He won his first truck race at Nashville last year. You have Haley Deegan's back, for what it was worth. Gray Ankrum there, Chandler Smith. I'm just going to go out and say Kyle Busch and leave it at that. The person that I would look at is somebody that might be able to sneak through and do something. Zane Smith, of course, has won a race, so he's free rolling. He doesn't really have the concerns a lot of these other guys do in regards to sponsorship and money and the whole bit. I'd see the people that probably run that. Yeah, the person I'd put as a wild card may not really be a wild card, but I'm gonna go with Ty Majeski, his new combination with Joe Shear Jr., number 66. Trying to go and get that elusive first victory in NASCAR's top 3 series. I think it would be huge if he was able to do that, and I think he's fully capable of doing that. So what were your thoughts on the truck race that'll be taking place on Friday evening, Josh?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm going to go with the other Kyle Busch Motorsports car in John Hunter Nemechek. Won this race last year, defeating his boss, Kyle Busch. So I'm going to just roll with history here. And I think, a guy with a wild card pick, I'm going to go with Ryan Preece. He's a really good, solid Cup driver and lost his ride, unfortunately, but seems like he might be waiting in the wings. Stuart Haas, and possibly if a ride opens up there, he could get back into Cup there. And he's really solid, been good throughout his career, just hasn't had the opportunity, so go with him. And then, of course, Algorithm went ahead and ran that one through, and it picked the 56 of Timmy Hill. So a little out there, but could have a solid finish. He maybe not a winning car for sure, but certainly somebody that could maybe get out a top 20 or possibly even a top 15 in this race.
And Timmy Hill and his brother, they've been building good trucks. So, it's not out of the realm to get a top 15, and they could possibly go and get a top 10 or more with fuel mileage and all that. That's why Tyler Ankrum won his first career race. It was on fuel mileage with, I think, the DGR team a couple of years back. So that's not uncommon, but you have to be able to manage that and get it across the line as the oven beeps because we're making food. We will go to, let me move all of that. We did, so Miss Hummer, after Matt Kenseth did a pretty good job in the TV booth, and now he's going to be in SRX, at least for 3 races, along with Miss Hummer 2.0. Haley Deegan's going to be driving, I guess, for a couple. And then, of course, Smoke announced his return to the driver's seat in regards to that series. So what am I thinking there? Yeah, when it comes to her coming back to announce, I'm glad that most of these bars, they don't bother to put the volume up, or most places don't really give her the time of day because she's a hack. She's not really focused on racing. She's using it as a bit to promote something, whether it's her cleansing or probably going and doing
Wine
yoga and wine and all the other crap that she's into. It's basically self-aggrandizing and promotion, and I'm not really there for her promotion. I'm there for the fact that there's a race, but a lot of fans don't seem to agree with that take. How about you, Josh? What were your thoughts when you saw that? Danica Patrick, of course, not only will be basically, not out there when it comes to this weekend and the racing that we will see and how she will be able to call it, or if she'll have anything of value to call, because she really doesn't have a clue.
I mean, yeah, Danica doesn't really have a clue for the most part. It's going to be a lot of basic statements and ums and ahs and all that stuff like she's known to do. And, she didn't really impress that well, I guess, when she did the announcing bit at SRX last year. And, it was whatever and everything. I mean, maybe an analyst role like at Indy, but, that's just the name thing to get people to tune into the Indy 500, like she did the past couple of years with NBC Sports. But it's whatever. Just again, wish Mark Martin could be in this role. Him and Matt Kenseth definitely provided a lot of commentary and intelligence to the broadcast. I think Mark Martin, if he wanted to, he'd be able to be in the booth for a couple of races, like Kenseth and Tony have done. Would have liked to have seen somebody like that in the booth for the Cup Series, but unfortunately, we get Danica for a few races, and maybe it helps the ratings somehow. And I doubt it though, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, probably I'm not sure if I'm going to be watching the race, maybe having some weekend plans or anything, but not looking forward to having to hear Danica on the broadcast, whether I watch it live or see highlights. Yeah. So I think.
So that's in regards to her coming back. It is what it is. I guess that's why I'm zoning, because it's Miss Hummer. And it's kind of like having to listen to her. You zone out because you don't want to listen to her because she sucks. But we'll have her for 2 weeks. Clint Boyer will probably hit on her. Clint Boyer will probably go and ask if, maybe he will if Danica and Michael.
He's not like PT.
Waltrip. Yeah, I mean, he's not a pervert, which is good. He's just an inbreeder. But the fact of the matter is, you're gonna go and it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be a weird dynamic. So I'm not really looking forward to that. I'm just hoping the racing is good at Las Vegas this weekend, minus the fact that the announcing is probably going to suck. Josh, let us know what's going on in your neck of the woods in regards to the sim side of things and iRacing and other gaming platforms. Gran Turismo, there's been stuff coming out with that too, so people are looking at that game as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with iRacing, the big news is that the iRacing Open Wheels 500 is back on schedule for 2022. Last year, Tanner Watkins, a good friend at OpenWheels.com, Open Wheels 500, he was supposed to host the race last year, but then did not host the race because he has more priorities in real life, which is understandable with his pursuit and continuing to pursue real life motorsports. Of course, we know he's part of the staff at IRP in Indianapolis, and glad he's being able to make inroads there. But of course, also glad that he's figured out to transfer over the, I guess, stewardship or however you want to call it for the Open Wheels 500. And I think I forget who it is, but it's one of the guys that runs or helps do stuff with RaceSpot TV, which is I think like the unofficial or official broadcasting arm for iRacing. I don't think they're actually affiliated with iRacing, but they do a lot of the major iRacing events, broadcasting on YouTube and Twitch, I think, for all those streams. So at least we have an opportunity now. Of course, it's gonna be hard, like it was in 2020. I mean, I'm sure I feel a little bit more confident in the IndyCar now, but still gonna have to figure out the setup side of it and whatnot to be able to get speed. But I do feel like I feel like now that the iRacing, they've continued to place updates on the IndyCar in general. I feel like it's gonna be close, but yeah, I think the setup, it's not going to feel impossible, I guess. I mean, I feel like if you can find a competitive setup or start out with a good base, you can go from there and figure out how to get a 4-lap average in and make the field. But I mean, it's going to be interesting, and maybe our best bet to make the field for that one is to, I guess, network with some people online with iRacing and try to get onto esports team that's running or going to be running in there. But if not, always try to do it the independent way, the old-fashioned way, and try to make it in ourselves. Kind of an individualist, so I may end up going that route, and I tend not to talk to people online sometimes, but especially on the iRacing side, I kind of just do my own thing. But maybe I'll talk to some people and see if I can figure something out, work something out when that comes around. But I mean, that's the big thing with iRacing for me, of course. Then, of course, you have the iRacing Indy 500 in May, which sort of will prep for the Open Wheels 500 in November. So we'll see how that goes and everything. But the other, like you said, the other thing was the Gran Turismo coming out soon for PlayStation, and I will hopefully be able to download that. I'm going to have to delete some games because the storage space is getting pretty low for my PlayStation already. I've only had it for a year and I'm already running out of space on my hard drive, so I'm going to have to either delete some games or buy an expansion drive online. We'll see what happens. I know some friends I was talking with, they already had to buy expansion drives for that, so I have to do that maybe for me because Gran Turismo, I looked on it, I think it's like 100 gigabytes probably, or 95 gigabytes, which is pretty big, and shows the technological advances that we've made in the gaming industry and that have been achieved and everything, and that's how it is. But a little inconvenient, but it's whatever. And I'm gonna have to, I guess, if I get a wheel, I'm gonna have to either figure out how to get an adapter for my wheel for PlayStation 5 or figure out a way to get a better wheel or something like that. But otherwise it'll just be controllers. And then I think iRacing, if I play iRacing this weekend, probably do 87 cars at Pocono, at the old Pocono before the repave, maybe Indy cars at Watkins Glen with the boot, and then maybe some Mazda Miata stuff if I have time. We'll see how the weekend goes. May have stuff planned outside of iRacing and in real life and all that stuff, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, we'll go ahead and roll into the close here. I mean, as always, you can follow the iRacing streams and any other streams that I decide to post at twitch.tv/useller2. Go on there and follow that and watch all my stuff. Still have the iRacing Daytona 500 up there that I ran successfully to completion at 200 laps, so go there and watch the replay of that if you'd like to. And then, of course, any other things that on there that may pique your interest, you can watch on there as well. And then, of course, my social media, you can go on, follow me on Twitter at JBHuffine. Go on there, follow, and talk about the racing, see what I have to say about racing and then other things in general. Go on there and see, and we can talk and have discussion about all the races and see what we're all thinking and how we're feeling about Danica Patrick commentating during the race. So that's all I got for tonight for me. Where we can follow you, Phil.
Yeah, you can follow me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can follow on Facebook.com. Philip G. Matthew. I'm there a little bit more, but not really. It's mostly on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, Philip G. Matthew 28. Our show at Gripster Pod is on Twitter as well, so please give us a follow there and like and listen to us. Our show, the Gripster Podcast, is on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and TuneIn. So we're on basically anywhere where podcasts are. The Dripster Podcast is on there. I try to go and do my part and get us out as soon as possible. We record on Wednesday evenings, try to get it out by the weekend, so that if you are going to listen, can actually go and listen to it while it's part of your weekend leisure. We'll be back next week on the GSP to discuss all the events of the previous weekend. We'll talk about NASCAR at Vegas. We'll talk about the MotoGP, Moto2, Moto3 openers, more like MotoGP and Moto2. Get into the racing that took place at V8 Supercars, NASCAR Vegas, all that Formula One. We'll be preparing for a test, and then we'll get into that, the one at Bahrain, and anything else that comes along here during this week, which is the Combine week in the NFL. So see what happens with anything like that just before the league year starts, as it's ironic saying league year since the Major League Baseball is doing what they can to go and strike. So they suck at life. So we'll see what happens with that. With all that done, my name is Philip Matthew. For my co-host Josh Fine, and for all of you listeners that give us the time and have liked us and downloads, we thank you for that. Thank you for listening to Gripster Podcast. Our prayers are out to those in the Ukraine for what they're having to go through because of frickin' Putin and the BS that's come from that. So hopefully for you, you're safe or have found safety, and hopefully this will be resolved sooner rather than later, so that we're not constantly in war the way that the U.S. was in war for decades on end, because they spend way too much on defense budget. So we'll see what happens with all that. Thank you for listening to Gripster Podcast. For Josh, I'm Phil. Take care and have a good one.